Hey, Robert. Good morning. Oh,
Good morning.
morning. How's it going?
It's going great. It's just overlapping meetings. I had a presentation at Greeters and then I had the Awame meeting and now this one. So it's 8:55 and it's my third meeting of the day.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow, that is
Uh,
really impressive.
it's I don't know if impressive is the right word, but it's something. That's for sure.
Oh, good. Excellent. Okay, well, I made you a co-host, so
Great.
maybe just check and see if it's working.
Looks like I have access, so that's good.
Okay.
Get my thing set here.
Yeah, and then I figured I'll do my regular quick rain thing, but
Yep.
but when I introduce myself, I'll just bring you in for a minute to introduce yourself first,
Sure.
if that makes sense, because it seems like a nice flow, and then we'll
Yeah,
cool.
that sounds fine.
Okay.
That sounds fine.
We
I'm
had let's see what the total count is now, but I think it was close to 50 registered, so
oh,
that's
good.
good.
That is good.
Yeah.
Didn't quite know what to expect, but
Yeah, I
I
know.
think a lot of people they just get tired. They get tired of all the information,
Yeah,
but sometimes they need it. So
agreed. Mhm. Yeah. 47.
good.
So, yeah, nice.
So I've just I've probably missed a prompt for um your your money smart, money wise, money whatever it is, the
Moneymaker.
money
Yeah.
maker. Yeah. Um, we talked about having me present, and I'm still, if you have needs, still reach out to me. I don't know if you still have
Oh,
needs
good.
in your.
Excellent. Okay, honestly, I'm not in the full-blown planning of it
Okay.
because I've taken on too much. So Corey and Caroline are more doing that.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'll write an email and connect all three of you and just make sure that,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I'd said I would, and then, but I don't know that I received any follow up, except I don't, maybe there was, and I just missed it. But anyway,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, well, we're running super fast too, so
Yeah,
we
and
might have missed it.
I certainly don't need to. I've got plenty on my plate, but
Okay.
since I said yes, and if you have needs, just know.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Ah, cool.
Okay. I'm going to be going pretty quickly through this content because I'm actually going to be briefly talking about 7 different programs. So
Wow.
it's
Okay. Should we hold questions till the end or do you want to do questions
um
now?
yeah, so at the end I have a slide with just, with all 7 one slide with all 7 of the programs I've discussed, to prompt questions. So we could hold till the end. Normally I prefer to do them while we go through. Let's go ahead and go ahead and take questions. I'll let you kind of monitor them and let me know. Just butt in if that's
Okay.
okay, and yeah, we'll just work that way.
Okay.
That's okay.
Yeah, perfect. And then I have a hard stop at 10:15.
Okay.
So I know
Okay.
it always goes over if you have time to go over for a little
Yeah,
bit.
I'm fine to go till 10:15. That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can try and cut it off, but
Oh, do you want me to hang on longer if needed? I can.
no, no, I
Okay.
figure that's plenty of
That should
time.
be plenty. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to keep you for much longer. That's a long time. Okay. Well, 12 people in the waiting room so far. So Maybe give
That's
it
fine.
another minute. 14. Okay, coming.
They're coming.
That was fun to meet Mark on the Florence call.
Yeah,
You were
yeah.
like, oh, my boss is here.
Yeah. Well, I had I had invited him to step in for me last week because there were a couple things that to share, but I was double booked.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but since he lives in Florence, I think the group was excited to have him there, so I think they gave him an open invitation. So we might we might coordinate efforts, and we might not both be there the whole time if we.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Very cool. Okay, I think I should just let people in at this
Yeah,
point.
that's
So,
fine. Yep.
okay, let's go for it. Good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Good
Morning.
morning.
Morning, everybody. Good morning.
I know, I tried to get on, it didn't let me know, I just got in.
Hello.
Listen, did you tell them?
Oh, yeah. If you want to mute yourself when you come in, I don't know why. Usually
No,
it
but Molly already brought that up to me.
automatically mutes
Did
people.
she ask or did she let you know?
Good morning. Great to see you all. We're going to give it another minute to see if more folks
That's
come
right.
in.
Oh, okay, that's fine, no problem. Yeah.
But yeah,
So
if you
I
want to
just-
mute yourself, usually it's automatic mute, but go for it. And we'll have chances for y'all to unmute and join the conversation as we go. Excellent. Excellent. Good. Well, great to see you this morning. I'm really excited to have Robert Killen here with us again. As always, it's such a pleasure. I'm going to go through a few quick intro slides, and then we'll get the real program started. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Robert, I think you're a co-host. If you want to admit people as they come in for the
Okay.
next few minutes, that'd be amazing. And then I'll take it over again. Cool. Okay, can you all see my screen? Fabulous.
Yes.
Great. Well, again, good morning and welcome everybody. So thrilled to have Robert again for PPP, restaurant grants, and more, COVID Aid 2021. This morning, I'm just going to go over a few things. Robert, if you want to introduce yourself real quick, that would be great.
You bet. Welcome, everybody. My name is Robert Killen. I'm the director of the Lane Small Business Development Center. We are headquartered in Eugene, although that doesn't mean much over the last year because everything is virtual, which has actually made it pretty great because we've had an opportunity to connect with rural Lane County better than we have in years. So really excited to be here. We do consider it our job because the SBA kind of tells us it's our job to be the first point of contact for things related to federal stimulus. So hopefully I can provide some new and interesting information about what's coming up.
Fabulous. Thanks, Robert. I'm Ariel Rubin. I'm the Lane County Venture Catalyst with Oregon Rain, and I also own my own marketing firm, and I'm part of my family's business, Hummingbird Wholesale. Today's agenda, we're just going to do quick introductions briefly with me, and then Robert will jump in. We're going to do questions throughout, and I'll tell you about how to do that in a second, and then we'll end roughly around 10, but we have about 15 minutes to go over for questions if we need to. Virtual etiquette, please remain muted throughout the session. If you have questions, you can put them in the chat or you can use the raise hand feature, and I'll interrupt Robert if there's a question coming up. So go ahead and put them in the chat. This is a place for fun, learning, and inclusivity. Please be polite, positive, and supportive in the chat. Just a reminder that this is being recorded, and I'll definitely post it on YouTube and the like afterwards, so you'll have access. A bit about Oregon Rain. We're here to catalyze entrepreneurial ecosystems, connect entrepreneurs to resources, including overlooked entrepreneurs, and contribute to the creation of prosperous economies. And we do that by creating infrastructure for startups, we like to say, so making sure that all of these pieces are activated so small businesses feel like they have the support they need to thrive. And we can't do this alone. We're always here to catalyze community. So if you have suggestions or thoughts, please let us know. A huge thank you to our partners, mentors, entrepreneurs, and funders. We love creating thriving entrepreneurial ecosystems with you. This is our robust team. It's growing by the minute, mostly women. Poor Corey's the only guy.
Ariel, I'm afraid you just got muted.
Oh, thank
There you
you
go.
very much. We're here to support all of your needs, so please let us know if you need anything. Just quickly, what's next? So you're always welcome to email me and I can send you a big list of all the resources available to you. And I'm always here for ongoing weekly mentoring. We have a great workshop coming up into the business model canvas. And the business model canvas is essentially business plans, but sort of the short startup version that's often used. So you're welcome to join this. I think it'll be really good. 10 a.m. with Joe Marushak. Some of you may know him. One of my special favorites, How to Craft a Successful Brand with Christina Scott. I actually worked with her at a past startup when we were making hazelnut milk. She designed our whole brand and she's fabulous. So please go ahead and join. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Robert, the director of the Lane SBDC, who's one of our favorite partners. And we always say that the more help, the better in the startup community and the small business community. And RAIN and SBDC and many other organizations are all here to support you in our various different and unique ways. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Robert, and you're welcome to share your screen.
All right. Thank you very much, Ariel. Much appreciated. And yeah, I'll just reiterate what she said. It is far too easy to get siloed in this work, and we have worked really hard. And I appreciate Ariel and Caroline from Oregon Rain enthusiastically wanting to partner because none of us can do all the work, but all of us can get most of the work done, which is great. And if we work together, it's just that much easier for everybody. So thank you again, Ariel, for partnering in this presentation in particular. So today we're talking about what new has happened. Now, some of you may have seen me. It's been a couple months now when I delivered some information about the first new package in 2021. There will be a little bit of review of that information, but mostly we'll be focusing on what has changed. What has changed and what's coming up. A very little bit about the SBDC. We've been around now for, I guess that's, boy, that's a lot of years, 38 years supporting businesses. There are 19 centers like mine around the state. We are all attached to the college system with a couple of universities tied in as well. I really proud of the fact that Lane was actually the very first of the SBDC centers in Oregon and the first to be attached to a community college in the country. We provide free and confidential advising to businesses of all shapes and sizes up to 500 employees, so really just about anybody. We also provide skill building courses from an 2-hour intro course called Going Into Business all the way through our small business management program, which is a 3-year cohort for businesses that are up and running and really want to become great at the art of business. And then we also have specialized services that a lot of people don't know about. We have a capital access team that will help a business identify and apply for funding when they have needs. We've got a global trade team that will help if you want to go international. And then we also have a market research institute to help with more complex market research studies. So I'm going to give everybody the slides. This slide is in here just so you know how you can contact us. And this is our agenda. So we're going to be looking at what has changed, what's new, and what's next. So we'll go ahead and get started. And I am going to go fairly quickly. We'll get through all the slides, but I want to make certain that that everybody has a chance to ask their questions. So again, I'll be moving pretty quickly. I apologize. I usually like to spend a little time telling stories. Won't be a whole lot of storytelling in this one. So let's talk about, the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program. It was one of the first programs that rolled out. Just a very brief overview. This is a loan program that by and large gives you a loan of up to 2.5 times your monthly payroll from 2019. And then if you use it as directed, you use it as you're supposed to, meaning you use it almost exclusively for paying payroll, then it's likely to be forgiven. So it ends up acting as a grant for many. Unfortunately, not as many as it should. So far in the forgiveness calculations, we're just not getting as many businesses applying for forgiveness yet, but we hope once they all do, we'll be in good shape. Some of the changes that came out, and most of these were at the beginning of the year. At the beginning, the IRS didn't communicate well with the with the SBA or the Congress for that matter, and they basically said, "Nope, if you're getting a grant, then you actually have to pay taxes on that grant." And that was not what Congress had intended. It took until the beginning of this year, but they finally got that changed. So now, any of those monies, the PPP funds that you used, even if they are forgiven, you do not have to pay taxes on it. And the things that you buy with those monies, the things that you spend that money on, is deductible as if it were a normal business expense. So that was really good news. Another thing that the IRS did is they said, actually no, this was in the PPP original layout. They said that if you got an EIDL advance, which is another grant program we'll talk about in a minute, if you got that, that you had to deduct that from any forgiven amount that was created in your PPP, which didn't make any sense because it ended up creating a loan for anybody who got an EIDL advance, which was just not what anybody had intended. Again, they were able to fix that, so that's good. They did add some new qualifying expenses. I'm not going to go deeply into that unless somebody wants to know. And they've simplified the forgiveness for any loan amounts up to 150,000. So all good. Another quick review. Yeah, Ariel.
Robert, do you need to pay interest on that?
So
Forgiveness.
on the PPP, yes, you do pay interest on the PPP, but if it gets forgiven, then you don't have to pay it. Any interest that has accrued gets forgiven as well. So yes, you do pay interest. The interest on a PPP loan is 1% for 5 years. It ends, if you end up with a loan, it ends up a 5-year loan for at 1%. For any amount that does roll into a loan. So the application process, again, just to know, you start with a lender, and hopefully your local bank or credit union is participating. That's getting fewer and fewer, but you start with your lender, you apply with them, they approve your loan request, and then they submit that package to the SBA. If the SBA signs off, you get an approval number, and then the lender will disperse the funds to you.
Wait.
So you don't work directly with the SBA on the PPP program, and that's something that's confusing.
Sorry, Robert. Now I muted you.
That's fair's fair. All right. So the current status, I just mentioned, lenders are getting harder to find. A lot of banking institutions that have been participating have just decided they're kind of done, and are no longer taking applications. Part of that is because they expected this program to sunset on March 31st. As of Tuesday, the House voted to extend this for another 2 months, so until May 31st. That is expected to pass in the Senate soon, so that'll give them more time. One of the reasons they're doing that is that they're just not utilizing all the money. There's still a lot of funds left in this program, and they don't expect them to get used up by the end of the month. So there is still opportunity here for this program. At the beginning of the year, they also made a second draw possible. So if you got a PPP loan back in 2020, you can get another one. So if it worked for you the first time, absolutely think about getting another one. There have been people who are concerned about their forgiveness because they haven't yet got forgiveness approved, and they're unwilling to try a second one until they get the first one approved. So I realize there is some concern there for some businesses, but if it did work, the first time around, definitely consider going back. You do have to have exhausted your first loan, have 300 or fewer employees, and you do have to be able to show a 25% revenue reduction in some quarter in 2020 compared to 2019. So you get to choose the quarter, but you do have to be able to show that. For for sole proprietors, you don't actually, if you saw a 25% reduction for the year, you don't have to find a quarter. You just show them your Schedule C. Um, and that's actually been the biggest holdup for most businesses, is they just haven't been able to prove that 25% revenue reduction. But if you do, consider it. The loan amount, as I already mentioned, is 2.5 times the average monthly payroll in 2019. If you're a sole proprietor, if you go down to the bottom of this list, you'll see that they now allow you to determine your maximum loan amount, your gross income. It's not the same as gross revenue, which is the total amount you come in, but after you eliminate the variable expenses at the top, the cost of goods sold, then you end up with your gross income, which again is line 7.
I can't
Um,
see it.
to
Mm.
to determine the potential loan amount, you would take that amount on your Schedule C from 2019, line 7, divide it by 12 to get a monthly average, and then multiply that by 2.5. And that is the potential loan amount you could get in a PPP. So if you're wanting to do the calculation yourself. Notice up toward the top, it does say that for NAICS codes that start with 72, they actually get an extra month, 3.5 times their average monthly payroll for their loan amount. And that relates to restaurants and basically hospitality. So they just get a little extra because they've been hit harder. Maximum loan amount is 2 million. So for second draw loans, so if you got this the first time around and you're wanting to do it again, go with your first lender. There's nothing saying you can't go to another lender, but they've made it much easier if you go with your first lender. If you go with your first and your loans are below 150, you don't even have to provide any financials. They can just take the information you provided the first time around and get you another loan started. So it's much easier. You don't even have to prove the 25% revenue reduction at time of application, but don't let that fool you. You do have to show it in order to get forgiveness. So so don't try and game the system there. That wouldn't work. So that's the PPP. Are there? I could take a question or two right now on the PPP if if there are any out there, Ariel.
There is someone asking about going with a lender, and she's saying that essentially they need a business plan and all of your financial statements. And I guess I can just say, yes, you need all of that information to be able to move forward with the lender.
Yeah, you do. Well, and it depends on the relationship. Some lenders, if they've got a long-standing relationship with you, they'll have all the information that they need to comfortably move forward. But it is up to every lender to determine how they're going to move forward. And I will say, I'm a huge fan of building local banking relationships. That said, if you're struggling to find a local bank or financial institution that can help you with this, I don't shy away from third-party lenders. And the 3 big names that are out there that have been successful are PayPal, and they're actually finding another lender, but they've got a really nice portal that's been very effective. Lendio.com, lendio.com, and nav.com, nav.com. All of them have done a great job getting people through the system fairly quickly, and all, as of a couple days ago, we're still taking applications. All right. Yeah, Ariel.
Yeah, so PPP sole proprietor started, she said she started, oh, sorry, this is from Mark, started in 2019. So revenue was next to 0 and at 0 several quarters into 2020. Is this acceptable as a baseline?
So if the revenue is next to zero in in the first part of 2020, that's the problem. You can utilize January and February of 2020 to determine a loan amount, but if you had no revenue during that period of time, then you wouldn't qualify for an amount. So that would be a problem. It's not the 2019 in that case. It's just the first 2 months of 2020 that are giving you grief. But if you had revenue, you could apply. You might have to look around for different lenders, because even though this is a federal program, as I said, every lender kind of runs it their own way and determines eligibility, their extra eligibility. So um, some lenders have made it harder for newer businesses to qualify.
And
Just because.
Samantha's asking if she needs to subtract the idle advance in calculating gross income for straw PPP.
No, you won't use the idle. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, the idle advance would not be considered revenue in this case. So it is earned revenue that you would be using. Um, but on the other end, you won't have to reduce your forgiveness amount by the idle advance, which you used to have to do. But no, you don't include the idle as earned revenue for PPP calculations.
And another question, can loans be used to relocate to a new location in the same area?
That PPP loans are not designed for that. If So there are different types of disaster loans, but all disaster loans are designed to help you recover from loss. And the PPP was specifically created to help keep people employed. So the PPP is really designed to utilize for payroll purposes and some other overhead type expenses. You can make lease payments, but if you're talking about actual expenses relating to moving your facility, that probably wouldn't fit in the eligible expenses for the PPP. If you could use the PPP for other things that you can identify and that frees up capital to make a move, that's perfectly fine. But to say that you're using PPP funds for that purpose probably wouldn't be a go.
Okay, two more quick ones and then we'll move
Yep.
on. How do I find a lender partial towards new businesses or startups?
So, okay, so I'll again, I don't want anybody to think that I'm not a fan of local business, of local banks. I love local banks. I was a banker myself, and I love building those relationships. I will say that the third party lenders tend to um, uh, they tend to create systems that align with the kind of the letter of the law, and that's worked really well. So I would reach out to somebody like Lendio.com, and give them a shot. If you want to go with somebody local, I'd reach out to some of the smaller, truly local banks to see if they are still participating. Um, I know recently I was able to send somebody over to Oregon Pacific Bank. They were participating. Columbia Bank, I believe, is still participating. Um, yeah. So you just need to reach out and find somebody who, and I would be really upfront with them when you make that call. Say, I'm a newer business. This is when I started. This is what my revenue looked like for, whatever it was, 2019. Are you comfortable working with me? And ask them for a really straight up answer. And hopefully you won't start down a path that eventually goes nowhere. Um, Anyway, that's all I can tell you. You just have to look around and find those relationships.
Okay, thanks. And the last question, should I subtract out all grants from gross income to calculate PPP loan amount?
Yeah, the grants typically are not allowed to be considered as a part of your PPP max loan calculation. Well, and let's think about this. In order to determine your PPP amount, um, typically you're using 2019 numbers. So you wouldn't have had grants in 2019. So to determine, and you're utilizing those revenue numbers to determine the maximum loan amount. Most businesses would not be using their 2020 numbers except in rare occasion, but in whatever case, you would not use the grant funds. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and move forward. The targeted idle advance is very exciting, but I'll give you a spoiler here. There's nothing you can do about it. This is a really exciting wait and see opportunity. And what it is, if you remember back to when they first came out with the EIDL advance, the EIDL stands for Economic Injury Disaster Loan. And there was this advance piece, and originally they said businesses could get up to $10,000 as an advance that they would never have to pay back. So it's effectively a grant. And then that moved over to the SBA, and the SBA said, well, we can't reasonably give everybody who applies $10,000. So we have to come up with some type of filter. And so what they did is they said, if you have, they would give businesses $1,000 per employee up to 10. They kind of created that rule on their own, and that ticked a lot of people off, especially people who thought they were going to get $10,000 for free. Well, what that ended up creating was this conversation in Congress, and it resulted in, at the beginning of the year, this targeted EIDL advance. And what they're saying is that for businesses that meet certain criteria, they can get the full $10,000 regardless of whether or not they have 10 employees. So it is for no more than 300 businesses with fewer than 300 employees. And are in low income neighborhoods. As I said, I'm going to share these slides. The low income neighborhoods, you see that it's underlined there, underscored. That actually has a link to a map that actually does work to identify whether or not you are in a low income neighborhood. So you can check it out for yourself. By and large, most of Florence above the river is low income. Most of Anita is. It's sort of spotty throughout Eugene and Springfield. Some of Cottage Grove, the west half of Cottage Grove, and Oak Ridge, those communities typically are low income. And if those businesses can show a 30% revenue reduction during any 8-week period, that's how the rule reads. It's actually any 2-month period, which is functionally how they're determining it. When comparing 2020 over 2019 between the months of March 2nd and December 31st. So basically, if you can show a 30% reduction in revenue in 2020 compared to 2019, and you're in one of these low income neighborhoods, the SBA will, let me back out, and you already applied for this the first time around. Okay, that's really important. I should have put that on this slide. So for businesses who are applied for the EIDL and they got $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 the first time around, and they're in one of these low income areas, and they can show a 30% revenue reduction, the SBA is going to cut you a check for the balance of the $10,000. So for really small businesses, if you only have 1 or 2 employees and you got $1,000 or $2,000, you potentially can get another $8,000, the rest of that $10,000, but there's nothing to do but wait. I'm afraid originally they said there was going to be this application portal that was going to open up, and I got people really excited about it, and I got a lot of emails when it never opened up. And eventually the SBA realized that given the size of the program, they're going to do it all internally with existing businesses that already applied. So unfortunately, if you did not apply the first time around, it's likely not going to open up. I don't think they expect to have any application process for this. They're doing the work. They're reaching out to businesses that might qualify. They're asking them to prove a 30% revenue reduction by sending them your financials. If that works out, then you'll get a check. but that's all you can do. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the ERC. Employee retention credit or employee retention tax credit. It's listed both ways. This is something that back in 2020, it just wasn't a big enough credit to concern yourself with, in part because you had to choose between a PPP loan or taking the tax credit. And for almost no businesses did it make sense to take the tax credit. The PPP was a better option. So in 2021, they made some changes, and they've actually improved upon those changes in the last couple weeks. And those changes are that you can qualify for a tax credit now of 70 that equals 70% of $10,000 in qualified wages per employee per quarter. That's $7,000 of tax credit per employee per quarter. When they came out with this in at the beginning of the year, this was going to be a two-quarter program, so you could do that in Q1 and Q2. They just extended that to the end of the year. So you now have 4 quarters that you could potentially earn or potentially get as a tax credit, $7,000 per quarter per employee. That's a huge number. Now, this is a fairly complicated program, so it's really important that you work with your CPA, your accountant, your payroll service, whoever really knows this stuff for you, to get you looking at that. But for any business that has employees, especially if you have employees yeah, anybody who has employees should probably look at this. Now, you have to have experienced a more than a 20% decline in gross revenue in a quarter, but it's important to realize this isn't year over year. It's this quarter versus the same quarter back in 2019. So 2019 is still your baseline. So if you are a business and you've seen at least 20% declines, then you could qualify for this. You can now have both the PPP and the tax credit, but you can't use the PPP for the same payroll that you're earning tax credits on. So if you have both, you can still get them both, but you're going to want to work with your accountant or payroll provider to make certain you're using it correctly. And they also added something that I know little about because they haven't provided much information, but they are offering this to what's referred to as a recovery startup business. And these are new businesses that started after February 20th, I believe it is, of last year. So they're actually creating a tax credit for payroll for new businesses as well. Again, I don't know too many of the details of that because they just haven't come out with them yet, but that's exciting. All right, so these are the things that I just went over that have changed. This slide is primarily for you to get a snapshot of what I discussed when I send you the slides. So let's go into what's new. Commercial rent relief. So this is actually an Oregon program, and I'm going to go through these fairly quickly because they only apply to commercial landlords. But basically, commercial rent relief came out. It's a program that can pay up to 100% of base rent that you haven't received since March of last year, up to a maximum of 100K per tenant. Tenants have to have been current with you as of March 1st of last year. You can't have people who were not current and then are rolling in because they want to make certain that this is the reason they are not current is because of COVID. That 3/1/2020 to 2/28/2021, that is the period that's covered by this program. So any rent that is missing during that period. The first application round began on the 8th and it ends on Sunday. So if you are or know a commercial landlord who has lost income as a result of tenants not paying because of COVID, let them know about this. it turns out they don't actually need the tenants for the first application, the initial application. They can do that on their own. It's definitely worth doing. And then they have a similar program for residential, and it came out a little bit earlier, the Landlord Compensation Fund. It does provide 80% of missing rent. It's very similar in how it runs, but the landlord must forgive the remainder. Landlord must be willing to forgive the other 20%. So that's up to you. It does require a declaration of financial hardship by the tenant, but most tenants who are going to basically get their rent paid for by the state are perfectly happy to fill that out. The first round of applications is over, but there will be a second round opening up in April. So again, another rent relief program for landlords to look at. So again, summary page here for you to review. And there are links, as there was before. The titles up here are all linked to the pages, the websites that can give you more information. All right. So now what's coming? We've heard about this for 2 months now, and it's still not here, but there is a Grants for Shuttered Venue Operators program. It provides 45% of 2019 gross revenue as a grant. So that's a pretty big number for some of these organizations. There is a cap at 10 million. Most aren't going to be organizations in our area that get to that cap, most likely. It does require a 25% or greater drop in revenue 2020 over 2019. I think for most venues, that's a pretty easy thing to show since venues just have been closed. And these are things like organizations like movie theaters, concert halls, any type of venues. And there's a little bit of uncertainty because the way the rule reads, it looks like organizations that utilize or manage artists who use venues should also be able to qualify for this. But then I've read that it really is only for physical venues. So there's some uncertainty there, but it'd be worth checking if either apply to you. You may not receive the shuttered venue grant and a PPP loan after December of this last year. So you can't basically get them both at the same time. There are tiers for the applications when it comes out. There are priorities. Venues that saw a 90% reduction or more will have the first 14 days of the application window to themselves. And then there's another 14 days for applicants who saw a 75% reduction. And after that, it'll open up to anybody who qualifies with 25% or greater reduction in revenue. You do have to have a SAM and DUNS numbers. These are federal numbers. This is one of the reasons this is taking quite a while to roll out, is because the SBA actually doesn't give out grants typically. A grant program like this is completely new to the SBA, but they're being tasked with running this program. So they're figuring out how to do that and comply with all federal laws and everything. They're wanting to do it right. So it's taking some time. But you will have to essentially set yourself up as a federal contractor in order to receive the grant, which is what the SAM and DUNS numbers are about. And I've provided links to that as well. The application to this program is set to open in April. We're just crossing our fingers on that. And then the last program that I wanted to mention is the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. I think it's one of the most exciting things we've got going because it is so needed. The grant amount for this program is unlike any of the other ones. They're all different. In this case, the grant amount would be your total gross revenue in 2019 minus your total gross revenue in 2020. They're just taking a look saying, okay, how much did you earn in 2019? How much did that get reduced in 2020? We'll give you a grant for the remainder. It's very broadly eligible, meaning that it's not just restaurants, but it's food carts. It's really any entity whose primary purpose is to serve food and drinks to patrons. Very broad eligibility. When the application window opens, there will be 21 days that is exclusively for owners considered underserved. So this is going to be minority, women, veteran owned, perhaps rural. I'm not certain about that yet. But there will be a window specifically for them to get the applications in early. Nobody who is receiving a shuttered venue operators grant can get this grant. So you have to pick and choose if they would both apply. Again, you need to have a Sam and Dunn's number to move forward. And the application again is to open up in April. It might actually open up in the next couple of weeks. It might open up before April because they're really pushing this one. So
Robert,
yeah.
sorry, can nonprofits apply for the SVO, the shuttered venue grant?
Oh shoot. I'm gonna have to look that up. I think they can, but I don't. I'll put that when I send you the slides. I will put a note, and you can get that out to everybody.
Perfect. Thanks.
I think that they. Oh, actually, I know they're yes, they are eligible. Yeah, they are absolutely eligible because I actually reached out to a couple entities that are nonprofits to let them know about it. So yes, yeah, they are eligible.
Perfect. Thanks.
Mhm. So on this slide, again, I have links to, in this case, these are more articles because the application windows are not yet opened, but there's good information here. And then down here for Sam and Dunn's, I have linked to the agencies that provide those numbers. This is actually Dun and Bradstreet that gives you a Dunn's number. And the Sam is a contracting system that is used by the federal government. All right. So in my opinion, and this is just me, the biggest takeaways in all of this, the first thing is that the employer retention credit is, it just gets better as they extend it, and the opportunity gets bigger, greater. If you have employees and you've got a CPA who knows about it, ask them, see if it's a good fit for you. You do have to be able to show that that 20% reduction, but if you do, it's a huge opportunity. And then both for residential and commercial landlords, if you're missing funds, and I have clients in a couple different communities who they just didn't get paid, both on the residential and the commercial side, and the chances are they're not going to get those funds back unless they use something like this. So I think that's a huge opportunity for anybody who's actually missing funds. And then finally, both of the grants, the venue grants and the restaurant grants, if you qualify for those, take advantage of them. They're just too good to pass up. So those are in my opinion, the biggest takeaways of recent opportunities and changes. So that brings us here. So I actually ran through that pretty quickly. We've got plenty of time to talk. So these are the different programs that I just went over, and I'm happy to answer any questions, any additional questions that come up.
Awesome. If everyone wants to just throw your questions in the chat, that'd be great. And actually, you could even unmute at this point,
Yeah,
Robert.
that'd be
Looks
fine.
like
Oh, yeah, that'd be fine.
we have plenty of time. So why don't you go ahead and unmute and ask a question?
Is there a percentage test on the restaurants versus a bar in a mixed environment?
Not that no, the way it's been written, Paul, is they've just opened it up to any venue that whose primary purpose is serving food and drink is eligible. They haven't shown me anything, but we don't have the applications yet. So there's still that still could happen.
Thank you.
You bet.
Catherine is asking about the Ssbci recapitalization program. Have you heard anything about that?
Ssbci recapitalization program. I've not, Catherine. I'm sorry. I do try and keep on top of this stuff, but that one is. I'm going to pull that up and see. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, something I didn't include in here. I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you. The newest package that just passed and actually it's not hasn't just passed. There is currently legislation being looked at that is expected to pass that is going to refund and extend some of the unemployment benefits, the health protection benefits that we saw back in April of last year. But honestly, I've had enough I've been following the business specific things and not those as much. But there is a lot of optimism that some of those programs that have helped, especially those who have been out of work or underworked over the last 9 months, that they will be able to continue some of those benefits. But I don't have the details to share here. And we're waiting at this point. We are waiting for them to get final shaped as they're going to be shaped and then approved by Congress.
Thanks. Mark, it looks like you've had your hand up for a while. Why don't you go first and then Linda?
Sure. At Conundrum House, we run a game room that we've had to close down. So does that count as a shuttered venue in this case?
I think that, well, shoot, I shouldn't say that it does. Mark, if you reach out to me, I'll find that out for you.
Okay.
I did have another game room that was interested in it and did some research of their own. But let me see what I can find out. So if you can reach out to me, my email's killenr, KILLENR @lanecc.edu, and I'll put that in the chat as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I've
I
been
have it.
putting it in the chat, Robert. So I
Okay,
think
thank you.
everyone should have it. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks.
You bet.
And to add to what Mark said, we also had a dinner venue. We did dinner parties as well. So it's more than just a game room. We actually hosted 3-hour dinner events.
So, so in the case that you offer dinner events as well, I think you would likely qualify for both or either shuttered venue or restaurant revitalization. So given what you know about those, so shuttered venue would be a grant of 45% of your 2019 gross. Restaurant revitalization would be the difference between what you earned in 2020 and 2019. You can probably pick and choose, but again, I will follow up. I'll follow up with the eligibility.
Great, Linda, go ahead.
Two
Yeah,
questions.
sure. Thank you. I put it in the chat there, but basically as a chamber, we're kind of in over our head with all these financial details, but we could recommend to our local restaurants how to prepare for this restaurant revitalization fund. And on the surface of it, it looks like simple math, what happened in 19, then what happened in 20, get a hold of the difference. But what else do they need to know to get in line and be able to apply quickly?
So I'm glad you asked that. I think that the first thing to get in front of them is to register for the Sams and Duns numbers. It's not a difficult thing to do, but it's just something that almost no businesses ever do unless you're contracting with the federal government. So again, it shouldn't be a complicated thing, but getting them the links which are provided here, as well as perhaps some training. I actually talked this morning. I was talking to GCAP, which is headquartered here in Springfield. They provide support for businesses across the state who want to do government contracting. I asked them if they could put together some training on Sams and Duns, which they're thinking about doing. So I will, as I come across that information, and if I have to do it myself, I'll do it. You could follow me or the Lane SBDC Facebook page because when I do trainings like that, that's usually where I post them. But I think that would be where I would start. I think the financial part of it's going to be pretty simple. Although I will tell you, Linda, a lot of smaller businesses, when you ask them to put together just their standard financial statements, if they're not working with a service that's helping them manage their books, that might not be an easy thing for some. So um, I would recommend that they do have their books in place. So they're just their standard profit and loss and balance sheet for 2020 and 2019. They might be able to get away with a Schedule C for both those years, but they're going to need one or the other.
Okay, thanks.
You bet.
Cool. Let's move to the other Linda. We have two Lindas. So Linda Coulter Burge, it looks like you've been posting a few things in the chat, but just to me directly, it looks like there's an unemployment webinar at 1 p.m. today. So Linda, maybe you could post that to everyone and not just me, and then go ahead and
I
ask your
can't see
question.
well enough to see that.
Thanks.
I was going to say that, yes, there's a 1 o'clock unemployment's going to be talking about PUA and the extensions and how it's changing,
Yeah.
and also unemployment for people. So I'll put that in the link. I did have a couple questions with the EIDL loan. If you got the partial, I understand that they're going to work on getting it to the 10,000. If you were told, for my case, I was told I qualified for the $1,000 advance, but then I was told they were out of money. Is that also going to be reviewed?
So, so is this recently you were told they were out of money, or back in?
Back then.
Oh, back then. So you should be in the first priority tier, because they were looking at, actually, let me back up. They actually have priority tiers for consideration for the targeted EIDL advance. And as I understand it, the first priority are businesses that received less than, gosh, this is going back a couple months. And too much has entered my head. I don't remember if you are in the first or second tier, but you are in either the first or second tier for consideration. And at the beginning of the year, they came out with 20 billion for this program, and I know they just added another 15 billion to it. So I would have some hope that you will get considered for that. So you received word that you qualified for the 1,000, but then before they could give it to you, they ran out of money. Is that what
Yes.
happened? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I know you're at the top end of the list. I just don't know if you're at the very top of the list, but I think there's some hope there.
Yay.
Yeah.
And then my second question was for the rental relief. Does that also work for property management companies?
So it is the owner. It would not work for a property management company. The owner would have to apply in both cases, commercial or residential. And the property management company, yeah, I'm actually not certain what happens with the property management company in that case. That's an interesting question that nobody's brought to me before. I'm going to put that down and do some research. I'm not sure where the property manager falls in that process. I know the payments go directly to the owner. So that creates an interesting dynamic there.
Cool.
Okay, that was it.
Awesome.
Thank you.
There's a question from Leanna, and I'm not exactly sure if I understand your question, so you might want to unmute and ask. But she says, regarding the ERTC, is eligibility to be a comparison 20% reduction 2019 versus 2020 quarter revenue?
Okay, so so it is a little different. Normally we compare year over year. So if we're talking about Q1 of 2021, we would think we would be comparing that to 2020. But with the employee retention credit, everything is being compared to 2019. So 2019 is your baseline. So even if you've improved in 2021 compared to last year, if you are still 20% less than you were in 2019, you would qualify. So, and every quarter, you look at every quarter to figure out whether or not you are qualifying for a tax credit for that quarter. And the tax credits can be applied for, they're applied for later. The trick is just to for your own peace of mind and knowing what's going on, is to reach out to your CPA or whoever you can use to help you with that, and just find out if it's going to work for you, because that might actually help make some decisions if you know you've got some extra funds coming in to support you. But hopefully that answers your question. 2019 is the baseline, regardless of the quarter that you're regardless of whether you're talking about 2020 tax credits or 2021 tax credits.
Awesome. Thank you. Thomas is asking, I bought a restaurant out of federal BK court and could not find a renter in 2020. Any help?
So if you couldn't find a renter, so I'm guessing what we're saying there is you bought a restaurant, you bought a building, and you were looking to lease it to somebody. Is that correct?
He says yes.
Okay. I don't think that any of the landlord programs are going to work there. I just don't think it's going to work for you, Thomas. I'm sorry, because with the commercial rent program, you have to be able to establish an amount. You have to be able to establish a lease to know how much you didn't get paid. And if you never had a lease in the first place, I just don't see that there's going to be support there. If my mind changes before I send my slides to Ariel, I'll put something in there. But unfortunately, I don't think that there's a lot in place that's helping you there. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just not seeing it. There aren't, unfortunately, because of the way these are built. It's actually kind of rare to have programs that are supporting landlords or property owners at all. These types of programs very rarely support them. And in the case, you've got sort of a double challenge here. You are both a landlord and it's brand new. And in both of those cases, put you really at the fringes of this. Again, if I think of anything, I'll let Ariel know and she can get it to you.
He's asking if you can use prior person's revenue.
I would not presume so. If you bought it and somebody else was continuing a lease, I think you'd have an argument there. I wouldn't guarantee it, but I do think you'd have an argument for that. But if you bought it and there was nobody in it, I don't think that that's going to fly. This would definitely be something associated with a commercial program, and that is an Oregon state program. So the link that will be attached to that program in the slides, and remember, it's on that summary page. That link will go to the state's website. There should be some contact information, and you could reach out to somebody there if you wanted to ask. But I wouldn't plan on it.
Thanks, Robert. Okay, it looks like I don't have any more questions in the chat. So if everyone just wants to unmute or just go for it, please do. Keep them coming.
I should tell you, I didn't mention the EIDL, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, because there haven't really been any changes to that. It is a continuing loan program. They did extend application for that program, the loan itself, to the end of the year. So you have time to apply for it. The Economic Injury Disaster Loan is actually a long-standing program that the SBA has run. Typically, it's associated with different types of disasters, so a hurricane, earthquakes, things like that. In this case, everybody in the U.S. is theoretically qualifies for it. Every business. It is supposed to provide a working capital loan that covers approximately 6 months of runway, 6 months of operations. And the terms on that are 3.75 for 30 years. So the impact to your cash flow is pretty minimal because it's such a long loan, which is kind of crazy, frankly. For nonprofits, it's 2.75 again for 30 years. The one thing that's a little hard to tell is exactly how much you would qualify for. You do apply directly to the SBA for that program, and then they do their calculations and give you a number. And that number has really been all over the board with different types of businesses. So no guarantees on what you'll be offered, but that is a program that is available for businesses that, none of these are working for you. That one's a little bit more flexible than anything else here, and pretty universal for eligibility.
Robert, so I'm a little confused then with the EIDL. So we received an EIDL loan early in the process.
Okay.
Does that mean then that we are eligible for the full grant, for a $10,000 grant, up to $10,000?
Okay.
Or how does,
So
yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, and then the other thing that I'm confused about is when we go to the dashboard, it says that we were accepted for an EIDL advance of $1,000, and then I submitted information for some other aspect of it, and so I'm just confused what I applied for.
Yeah, that is not uncommon. So it was one application, and then there was a checkbox that asked you if you wanted to get an advance. That was the advance portion. And then you could take the advance and choose to ignore the loan that they offered you in the end if you wanted, which a lot of people did. Or you could take the loan. In your case, it sounds like you took the loan. You were qualified for that advance, but the funds in the advance portion was a separate bucket than the loan. The loan program comes from different funds. So they had this special bucket of money for the advance, and that bucket ran dry. And what they've done now is they've refilled that bucket specifically for the advance portion. The EIDL loan has continued to operate and take new applications, but they haven't been able to give anybody advances until now. And so now they're going back and looking at people who didn't get either the full 10,000 that they now qualify for. They didn't qualify before based on the old rules. But now they're reviewing past applicants or past recipients, and they're basically giving them what they didn't get the first time around. So hopefully you'll see a $10,000 check out of this. All
right, we shall see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You bet. Okay. Well, we made it to 10.
Yeah, that's awesome. Good. Any last questions before we wrap up? I've been putting our event page, the SBDC's website, and also both of our email addresses in the chat. So you're welcome to reach out. And I'll send the recording shortly.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate sharing.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you,
You're
Robert.
very welcome, Adrian.
Thanks, Adrian.
Good to see you, Jaime.
Thanks, Robert.
Yep.
Great
Thanks, Robert.
information.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Ariel.
Robert.
Bye.
Bye.
I'll get you the slides here shortly.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thanks, Robert.
Thank you, Ariel. Take care.
Bye.